Hi everyone, Pumpthany Quintano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of the new St. Vincent album, Mass Seduction.
Wee woo, wee woo, wee woo! Booty alert! What's with the booty?
I don't know. It's just the album cover.
Did she drop something? Is she gonna pick it up?
Maybe she is. It's possible, I guess. Stop. This is the latest full-length album from top-tier indie and art popper, Miss Annie Clark. This is her 5th full-length album under the St. Vincent name. It's been 10 years since she debuted under this moniker with Marry Me. Nice. And it's been interesting watching her create this very lavish and playful chamber pop music with an art pop twist that has progressively gotten quirkier and noisier and weirder, reaching peak strangeness on her last full-length album in 2014, the self-titled record. There were moments on that album that were so odd, they were like difficult to stomach. And not to say that Annie should stray from the fray. For better or for worse, I think that's actually when she's coming out with some of her best stuff. And going into this new record over here, I actually had a fear that she would play it kind of safe on this one, given how plain and underwhelming tracks like New York were leading up to the record, and she brought on guys like Jack Antonoff to kind of do some songwriting and production. And once I heard the entire LP, I was kind of surprised to hear that my issues with it were not that it played it too safe, but that it was just too half-baked. This is a really strange record for St. Vincent. Like, it is easily her most inconsistent album. The flow of the track list is really awkward too. I mean, pretty much every record up until this point has had a very strong sonic theme running throughout it. Mass Seduction just seems really unsure of itself by comparison. It's a lopsided collection of some of Annie's most bombastic barn burners and subtle ballads. Not to mention there are a number of tracks on this thing that end on a very underdeveloped note, like on the song Slow Disco, which starts off well enough, very pretty chamber orchestra instrumentation on this thing. Annie's vocal harmonies are great, some of the lyrics are pretty heartbreaking, but then the song is just taken away by a single refrain about a minute in, and then it coasts on that and just finishes. It seems like kind of a cop-out. The song Young Lover is very similar in that it has a very promising start, and then it hits a point of repetitive tediousness where this instrumental that's kind of glimmering, it's like a bunch of weird sparkling guitars and undefinable sound effects. It's interesting for a moment, but the track just kind of hangs in this spacey, drony limbo until it just plays itself out. Until it's just tired of itself, I guess. Then we have Fear the Future, maybe the most inconsequential track on the entire record. I'm kind of floored as to how it made it onto this album. The instrumental seems like a fusion between new wave music, industrial, and like a sleigh bell song, but without the cocky, fun attitude to it. The bustling, grinding instrumental does very little for the tune and Annie's vocal performance. Her vocal acrobatics sometimes just don't really make sense over the weird digital mayhem that has been created in these beats. I think Sugar Boy is another example of that. But anyway, this track kind of ends out of nowhere with a sudden synth rush, almost as if to acknowledge that they didn't really know where they were going with it. And New York is the single that had me worried going into this album to begin with. And for a very low-key ballad, it doesn't stir up much in the way of emotion, even as Annie leads this very cool panoramic chorus line that's very epic in sound, but I would say has a very small emotional impact. It sounds like a heavily rehearsed reprise for like a Broadway show or something, as opposed to a compelling ballad. By comparison, the song Happy Birthday Johnny does way more with way less. Annie's intimate vocals sound fantastic. The sad and dreary simple chord progression on the piano is the whole thing cuts like a knife, and the vivid storytelling in the lyrics is part of what makes the song just hurt so much to listen to begin with. So while there are a lot of misses on this album, when this record hits, it really does hit. The song Pills is easily my favorite single from this entire thing. It's a smart piece of detailed synthetic pop. There's a jittery, fun chorus on this thing. I love Annie's quick vocals. Pills to do, pills, pills, pills. Just listening to it over and over makes me feel like I'm going crazy. Overall, the song seems like a funny statement on how medicated modern society is. And the song features easily some of the most bold and gutsy guitar work on the entire record. Then there's a weird instrumental breakdown in the second half with all this banging, clanging metallic percussion, some watery psychedelic guitar chords that sound like something out of like the Beatles psych pop era. It's a great track. I love the title track on here too. I love how boldly the track dives into this realm of sexuality, talking about how Annie can't turn off what turns her on. I love that in her music and her lyrics, she continues to be really unapologetic on this topic and just, you know, it is one of the many things that makes her a more interesting lyricist than a lot of her contemporaries. The song dishes out a nice, funky groove, some very weepy, melting vocal harmonies, bold guitar leads, and one of Annie's most impassioned vocal performances on this entire project, too. And even though I was kind of cool on Los Angeles to begin with, it did grow on me. The opening theme melody reads to me as like, I don't know, an interpolation or like a little bit of a remix of like a Kraftwerk melody, as well as the patient pulsating beat on this track. The whole thing just kind of reminds me of like the old school of German electronic music. There are also some very freaky guitar embellishments on this thing, and the simmering low-key verses on this track transition really nicely into the thrilling hooks. I would say the song Savior is another highlight, despite it being as low-key as it is, but it is one of the more fully developed tracks in the track listing here. But outside of that, I mean, there's not really much more for me to celebrate on this album. At the end of the day, this record is kind of a mixed bag. It's very directionless. It features some of Annie's most fleeting songs, some of her most directionless songs, and while this record does have its hits, they're really too few and far between for this album to be one of her best records yet. I'm feeling a light to decent 6 on this thing. Transition. Have you given this album a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best. You're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like. Please subscribe, and please don't cry. Just leave an angry comment in the comments if you're angry. Over here next to my head are a couple St. Vincent reviews that you can click on and watch. Please check those out, or you can hit the link to subscribe to the channel. I'll see you guys in the next one. St. Vincent, mass seduction forever.